Okay, hi Liv. How are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, thank you.
Thank you for coming on. It's nice to have you here. So, a lot to talk about and a rather short amount of time. Yesterday, I had another stroke survivor on. And so it was strange that there were two in a row that booked like one day apart. This isn't some kind of National Stroke Awareness Month or something like that, is it?
No,
No?
no, I think it was just the timing.
Just an odd coincidence. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. She told me about hers, and yours was different. Hers was something. Yours was a hemorrhagic. Is that how you pronounce that?
yes.
Okay. Hers was the other one, which I forget how to say it.
Is it ischemic?
Yeah, something like that. Right, right. And she explained how. I said, "Well, how did you know?" And she said she was sitting in a conference room meeting, and all of a sudden it was like the room started to distort and the walls started to move and strange things like that.
Wow.
And it sounded almost like hallucinations from some kind of drugs or something like that. And that's what she said that it felt like. Yours was different, I would assume. Why don't you tell us the story about what you were doing when it happened and what you felt like and what occurred? Just give us the backstory.
Sure. It had been a crazy busy week. I was a high school English teacher, and it was a week of long nights of correcting and not much sleep, lots of caffeine, and just nothing healthy. There's so much more that we know now about the importance of sleep and the importance of more water and what can happen to increase and decrease um, the blood pressure. And I was just too busy even to get my prescription taken care of. So I was out of that as well. So anyway, I was sitting in my classroom. Fortunately, one of my colleagues, called me to debrief this very contentious meeting that I had led with our department. And as we were talking, suddenly I had this sharp pain in my head. And then I noticed that my left hand suddenly felt like something that had absolutely no bones. It was like it had turned into a snake. And my left leg all of a sudden there was nothing. And because I had been sitting in a position that wasn't the best, I suddenly slid off my chair and landed on the floor. And so while all of this is going on, my colleague kept talking and I was focusing on my breathing. And she noticed that I wasn't responding to her comments and she asked if I was okay. And I said, no. She asked if she could call my husband. And I said, yes. But I couldn't think of Mark's number. And fortunately, Janelle, my colleague, was smart enough to call his head secretary, and she protocol going, the kind of the chain of command of who needed to be called before they could call the paramedics. And everybody happened to be in their office, not on their phone, which is miraculous. And and Mark even had been on his way home, and when he saw that there was a call from Mounds View High School, he thought I was calling to see if he wanted he could have lunch with me. And instead, he got the call that something had happened to me, and he beat the paramedics to the school. And because he works for Boston Scientific and he is very comfortable in the world of medicine and everything that can happen, he was able to persuade the paramedics to get me going to the hospital instead of waiting to do the health background.
Well, let me interrupt you here for a second.
Sure.
So you were having a stroke and you were on the
Yes.
floor and there was obviously something wrong and your colleague was right there next to you.
No, she was on the phone.
Well, okay, but she was in the room with you?
No,
There was no one in the room with you.
nobody was in the room with me. So if she hadn't called me,
Oh, I see. Okay. But you had said something about protocol of all these people that you had to go through before you could call paramedics. I mean, why couldn't she just immediately call 911?
that's just the way things are set up at that particular high school. I suppose it's probably true for a lot of schools, school districts.
Okay, so
So
how long did it take before somebody physically came to you?
probably 10 minutes.
So you were alone there on the floor for 10 minutes.
Yes.
Wow.
But there were no students in the building that day. It was just for teachers. And I remember when the paramedics came to get me, being worried that students were going to see me, on a stretcher. And I didn't want students to be scared. And I didn't care if my colleagues saw me, but.
All right, let's skip forward a little bit because we're kind of limited on time. So you get to the hospital and they determine that you did in fact have a stroke. Is that correct? The doctors
Yes.
looked at you? Okay.
Although by that point, I don't remember anything after saying the hospital that I should go to. And, and then that was it. I don't remember.
So you went unconscious after that?
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
What's the next thing you remember?
So the next thing I remember is seeing my kids all nervous, and I was on medication. So at that particular point, I wasn't too worried about something or anything. In fact, what I was worried about the most was who was going to be covering my classes, because suddenly I realized 2 days had gone by and the next day was going to be a Monday, and I was worried about what was going to happen with my students. So, what does that tell you about me? Maybe
well, you're very dedicated to your work, which is very admirable. How long ago was this stroke?
13 years.
13 years ago. Okay. So again, we are kind of quickly running down on time. So you have made pretty much a full recovery, it seems, from what I can tell. Would that be accurate, or do you still have some?
Well, there are certain things like my balance will never be what it was, and my left hand will never be what it was. I can't hold things in my left hand. I was a lefty, so I can't write. I had to learn how to write with my right hand. And there were a lot of things, but there are so many wonderful things that happened as the result of having the stroke and then just battling to get back to the classroom and to get back to life with my family, because our youngest was only a second grader. The other two were in college.
Oh, all right.
And the youngest one, I worried about him because up to that point, I had never been away from him overnight, and suddenly I was in the hospital for 35 days.
Okay, so you wrote a book called My Stroke of Blessings, A Message of Hope. Yeah, you want to hold it up? A little higher. There we go. Okay. I'm going to assume that the stroke was the inspiration for the book. And
It was, yes.
we've got about 4 minutes. So can you give
Ah,
us an overview of the book? Is the book like a memoir of
it
the
is.
experience? And
It is.
okay.
It covers, my time in the hospital, the horrible summer after I got out of the hospital, um, and then my road to returning to the classroom, as well as just all the things that happened in my quest to not let my stroke define me.
Okay, something you mentioned before we got on about how the book hopefully has been an inspiration for people who didn't necessarily have a stroke.
Right,
That the book could be applied to almost any kind of hardship.
exactly.
Elaborate on that idea a little bit, if you would.
So while I had written it for people who dealt with strokes, whether that was somebody in the family or themselves, or somebody who wanted to be a physical therapist, occupational therapist, neurologist, whatever, I quickly realized that people were responding to my book and saying that this is so helpful for me because of some of the difficulties that I'd had, all these situations that I hadn't wanted to happen, even something like a divorce, or something with a family member, with a child. And so it's been wonderful to see how people can learn about the importance of resilience, about the importance of not giving up, regardless of how difficult the situation can be.
When was the book released?
The beginning of December 8th.
2024?
Yes,
Oh, okay. So not that long ago, just a couple of months. And the reviews are coming in well, it sounds like, yeah?
I'm happy. I love the fact that, people who are friends and are reading the book because, friends support other friends. And they've been pleasantly surprised that it's not just a book written by a friend, but it's something. One person, in fact, started reading it, and 3 chapters later, she realized she was still standing in her kitchen, just because the book had just taken her into a whole different situation.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The last question, do you have a website that you want to give out?
There will be one soon. I
Okay.
should have had that before, but for now, you could certainly, if you wanted to connect with me on Facebook, it's just Liv Rosin, Librosin, and I will certainly be a friend with you. That was something that was so important to me during those initial months.
Okay, we'll put that up on the screen,
Okay,
and maybe in the show notes we'll put website coming soon or something
it
like that.
is.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
is.
All right, Liv. Well, it was nice meeting you, nice chatting with you, and
Nice chatting with you too.
best of luck with your book, and best of luck with
Thank
your
you.
continued recovery.
Thank you so much.